In Paradise, Kevin drives the school bus through town to take all the kids home. After that, he catches the bus to the depot and asks the dispatcher, Ruby, for additional shifts because he needs the money to cover his father's medical bills after he passed away. Unfortunately, Ruby can't offer him anything right now. When Kevin comes back home, he receives a call from the vet sharing the most recent test results. His dog's cancer is getting worse, and it's time to say a final goodbye. Then, Kevin takes his old dog with him and goes into the house, but his mother tells him that his son Sean didn't want to go to school. Kevin scolds him for not paying attention to his education, but Sean responds that he's not feeling well and plays loud music to tune out his father's worries. Kevin gets really angry and starts shouting, so Sean shouts back that he hates Kevin and wishes he was dead. Kevin is so upset that he needs to step out of the room to cry by himself. Later that day, Kevin took his dog to the vet and stayed with him as he received an injection to peacefully end his life. The next day, the wind started blowing very hard and caused a part to come loose from a transmission tower. This leads to several sparks that quickly spread to the grass. Because of the wind, the sparks quickly turn into a fire that spreads fast. A truck driver on the road notices this and contacts the emergency services. 2 fire trucks quickly head to the location but soon notice that the regular road doesn't lead up there. They have no other option but to use a narrow mountain road that isn't built to support their weight, so they drive with great care and at a slow pace. This allows the fire to have more time to grow and spread. Since they can't locate an access point on this road, they'll need to return and look for a different location to strike. Meanwhile, Kevin heads to work and keeps sending texts to Sean, but Sean doesn't reply. After he drops off all the kids, his mother calls him to let him know that Sean has been throwing up and has a fever, so he wasn't lying. Kevin needs to stop and get gas, so he tells her he'll call her again soon. Unfortunately, Kevin spends a lot of time waiting because there's a long line. Ruby calls him to scold him for taking too long and tells him to bring the bus to the depot. As Kevin speeds up as much as he can, he spots the smoke coming from far away. He stops by the pharmacy and picks up some medicine, but then his ex-wife calls him. She called Sean and he wants to go to her house, but she's leaving with her new boyfriend for a trip tonight. Kevin says he'll handle it and then ends the call. Soon, additional firefighters arrive to talk about the situation. The fire has burned about 300 acres and the wind has moved it down the canyon. There's a small town with 800 people that they need to warn, but Paradise is still far away, so they should be okay. A second fire is discovered 3 miles away from the first one, leading to a power outage. A firefighter arrives in the small town and reports seeing thick smoke and flying embers coming from a location 5 miles away from where the fire first started. The situation is more severe than initially believed. There are multiple fire points appearing in different areas, and individuals are becoming very worried and frightened. The man is losing his ability to see clearly very quickly as well. The leader understands that this is a massive fire, so they need to begin getting people out right away. The firefighter dashes through the streets, quickly helping residents escape their homes. Some people are so eager to get away that they aren't paying attention, and this leads to cars crashing. People who don't have cars are taken to the fireman's truck. The flames are near enough that several people have already been burned. Once everyone is inside a vehicle, the firefighter begins the convoy by leading the locals out of town. Eventually, the air tankers show up and begin dropping fire suppressant over the area. But with the strong wind, it's really hard to aim properly and hit the intended target. The leader tells them to go fly over and try once more. He also keeps calling the nearby cities to get more fire trucks. The convoy is having difficulty moving forward because visibility is nearly gone and there's not enough room to drive through without hitting the flame. More cars crash when they all stop at the same time, and people get out to walk and keep going on foot. As the locals rush to jump into the creek, a man suddenly catches fire, and a neighbor quickly helps by covering him with a blanket. The fireman is constantly calling for help on the radio because a burnover is about to happen. The fire trucks are trying to get into the area, but they keep running into things on the road and eventually can't move forward anymore. The air tankers are making another pass. However, the flame retardant isn't making any difference at all. When the burnover finally reaches the creek, the firefighter tells everyone to jump in the water to stay safe just before the flames come over them. The leader and the main group are worried since they couldn't reach them, but soon after a few minutes, the firefighter called them back. They are still alive, but some people have burns. He also tells them that how fast the fire spreads is very important, so it will eventually get to Paradise. At the same time, the birds are flying away from the fire and almost cause Kevin to crash when they cross the road. He He switches lanes to allow the police and 2 fire trucks to go by and realizes the smoke is becoming more intense. Then he calls Sean and leaves a message apologizing for their argument. He also promises to bring him the medicine after work. As the helicopters finally show up to move the firefighters, the Paradise Town Hall gets orders to evacuate East Paradise just before the phone lines stop working. But when they attempt to send the alert, they find out the system is also not working. The air tankers continue to fly but aren't making much progress. The firefighters and the helicopters realize that the wind is too strong, so they won't be able to stay in the air for much longer. The fire is now moving across the canyon and there's no stopping it anymore. In a school located in Paradise, Mary is working to keep her students calm. They haven't gotten the evacuation orders yet, but the principal is getting impatient and asks the teachers to send the children home. Some parents are already picking up their kids, and the teachers are starting to call the other families. While driving, Kevin receives another call from his ex, who keeps getting messages from Sean instead of Kevin. He stops his car to have a more meaningful talk, but his ex asks him to consider Sean's well-being because he definitely doesn't want to live with him. After she hangs up, Kevin leaves another message on Sean's phone telling him he'll go home now. As Kevin turns the bus around and makes some car drivers angry, Ruby tells all the buses to take the vehicles to the West Depot, even if there are still kids on board. At school, the principal finally receives the evacuation orders. Because the alert system isn't working, the town hall is asking anyone who has a radio to spread the information. Mary quickly calls her best friend and asks her to pick up her child from a different school because her husband is away on a trip. Her school still has a lot of kids who can't be picked up, so the principal calls the bus depot for assistance. Ruby calls each of her drivers and asks them to step forward as a volunteer. All the other buses say they're already full, so Kevin doesn't have any other option but to accept the job. Meanwhile, the firefighters finally locate a way in and begin using the hoses, which will take a lot of time and effort. After avoiding a lot of traffic, Kevin gets to the school and runs inside, telling everyone to move fast. Ash is already falling in town when they come out, so everyone puts their hoods up. As the children board the bus, a mother arrives just in time to pick up her son right before they leave. Mary wants to stay at the school and help with locking up, but Kevin asks her to come along because he can't manage the kids by himself. After they leave, Mary shows Kevin the school's evacuation route. Kevin doesn't agree because the road is moving very slowly because of the traffic, but Mary insists they should follow the official plans. Inside the helicopters, the firefighters see the traffic stuck on the roads and are concerned that people might not be able to get through. They arrive close to an exhibition center, which has now turned into the main location where the incident is taking place. The leader wants to move everyone out of the entire town, not just the eastern part, and a few people believe this plan is not a good one because the confusion it would cause would make it hard for fire trucks to get around easily. However, since the fire is moving down the canyon, they have no choice. The leader tells them to shut off all the power. Fire trucks and police cars keep passing by the bus, and the children start to feel scared. So Mary tells them that they're here to keep them safe. While she's not paying attention, Kevin changes direction and chooses a different route. Mary gets really upset and yells at him, but Kevin gestures toward the fire and says the traffic congestion might end up harming them. He turns again and they reach a road with just a few cars, but there's a fire on the side and the firefighters are rushing over to deal with it. Kevin manages to move the bus quickly enough to avoid the approaching trucks just in time. At the depot, a red alert is triggered and all the employees start running away. Ruby decides to stay a bit longer, but she can't reach Kevin since the radio system has also stopped working, so she ends up leaving too. On the bus, Kevin and Mary discuss their childhood in Paradise and the challenges of raising a teenager. The fire is moving quickly through East Paradise now, and the firefighters are working hard to control it using their hoses. The hospital's cardiology wing is also on fire, so they need to rescue the patients and save the building. The air attack has taken place because they can no longer operate due to the strong winds and the smoke. The fire is now blocking roads too, causing the traffic to slow down even more and making it harder for the fire trucks to get through. Because people are leaving their cars and walking instead, the leader tells his soldiers to take away all the abandoned vehicles. Kevin is nervously shaking on the bus because the traffic isn't moving. He keeps trying to call Sean, but there's no signal. Because he didn't sign up for their emergency alert system, his family might not be aware of the evacuation orders. All of a sudden, a house close to the road starts burning. The children get scared and Mary quickly takes them out of the way from the windows. Drivers in cars also get scared and attempt to move forward, which blocks the bus's path. A desperate Kevin asks Mary to take over the wheel before he leaves the bus to speak with the police, who aren't moving the traffic because the fire truck needs to get through first. After a useless argument, Kevin chooses to take control of directing the cars by himself. He directs them to the other lane and makes room for both the fire truck and the bus to pass. Mary gets it ready enough to take the jam out and gives the wheel back to Kevin. Now they're finally going at a good pace, but when they get to the meeting spot, they're shocked to find that the place is also burning. Kevin and Mary go out looking for others, but they don't see anyone. Mary says they need to head to the evacuation center before the kids call her. She runs back and discovers one of the girls hiding under the seat because she's too scared. Mary gets her to come out by hugging her, and Kevin goes back to the wheel so they can leave. At the exhibition center, the chief finds out that only 8,000 people have been evaluated, leaving 30,000 still in need of rescue. Their main concern is the propane facilities, so the leader focuses on them first. Active power lines are falling and blocking the roads, so some firefighters are cutting them to clear the way. The leader searches for the person in charge of the power plant, and that person explains that they have disconnected the automatic systems, but they have not yet reached the manual controls. The chief becomes very angry and shouts at him, then orders him to do something because he needs his men fighting the fire, not working on the cables. Meanwhile, the bus is once more stuck in a traffic jam. Kevin's idea is to stay ahead and move southwest since he can spot a clear area in the sky. There are two roads to get there. One is shorter but very narrow with many 180-degree turns that might be difficult for a bus to navigate. They have to take the longer route because they don't have any other option. The children notice that Mary isn't sure where their parents are, but she assures them she'll figure it out and bring them back soon. Another power line falls to the ground, creating several hazardous sparks. Kevin is watching out for the poles and manages to swerve around them just in time, but the other cars are getting really worked up and are driving erratically, so he also has to avoid them. Soon, the falling cables bring down the poles too, so Kevin has to make quick turns to drive around them. People are beginning to stop using their cars, which means there's another issue to deal with. The children scream because the sparks come too near the bus, and Kevin has to make a sudden left turn when a pole blocks the whole road. The front window begins to crack as Kevin speeds as much as he can, intentionally crashing through a fence to get to the southwest road faster. The situation here is even more severe with the flames spreading worse than before, and there's also a big traffic jam because everyone came up with the same idea as Kevin. Firefighters are using the hoses as hard as they can, but they're not able to make much headway. When a man starts burning, Mary has to make sure the children don't notice the terrible sight. Suddenly, some thieves come out onto the road and begin taking things out of a truck. They circle around the bus and ask to be allowed inside. So Kevin and Mary tell the kids to stay away from the windows. There is a man holding a gun at the door, and he has managed to open it slightly. So, Kevin begins kicking it to push him back. At that moment, Mary notices a space in the left lane, and Kevin quickly turns to get out of the traffic jam. Now, their only choice is to look for the narrow road. At the evacuation center, vehicles continue to come in, and thousands of tents have been erected to provide shelter for the affected people. Ruby arrives safely and finds all the drivers, but Kevin is missing. The school parents are present, so she needs to inform them that the children were evaluated but are still trapped on the bus. Everyone is complaining, so Ruby speaks up for Kevin and tells the parents to keep their hope alive. The children on the bus are feeling very hot and really thirsty. Mary makes them fan themselves with their homework, but it's clearly not enough. Suddenly, smoke begins to enter the bus via the air conditioning, forcing Kevin to turn it off. It will make the heat feel worse, but they still need to breathe. Mary asks Kevin to stop the bus because a girl is about to faint and they need to find some water. She steps out by herself and asks Kevin to leave if the fire gets too near. Mary runs through the smoke and ash, constantly checking each building in the RV. Kevin is worried because he sees the fire getting closer to a gas tank, so he begins shouting to get her to move faster. Eventually, Mary breaks into an RV's door and finally finds some bottles, which she takes back with her. When she notices other survivors running nearby, she has to slow down and stay hidden so she doesn't get robbed. At that moment, the gas tank explodes, and the kids start crying, believing they've lost their teacher. Kevin keeps calling her name, and Mary follows the sound to locate the bus once more. They rush back inside and leave, but just then another small explosion happens on the grass. Kevin manages to avoid the flames by swerving the bus, but soon finds himself stuck again as more new flames block his path. As the children keep shouting, Kevin drives backward and has to make many quick turns to dodge the flames that keep appearing all around them. After a lot of difficulty, they finally manage to find the exit. A few minutes later, Kevin is driving cautiously along the tight mountain road, and Mary is assisting him by watching out for his blind spots to help guide him through the area. At the same time, in the exhibition center, the team realizes the fire is moving towards those narrow roads. Since they can't send any more resources that way, anyone still left there will have to take care of themselves. Soon, Kevin and Mary see people walking on the road in the opposite direction. Kevin talks to them and finds out that there's a fire on the other side of the ridge. He tries to warn them that the fire is getting worse from the other side, but the group decides to risk it and keeps going forward. Kevin gets off the bus to look at the ridge and feels really sad when he sees that there's a fire all around. After that, he goes back to the bus and informs Mary that they have no other option but to stay inside because there's no place else to go. Mary keeps her composure for the children's sake, but she ends up crying when she sits down. Kevin then begins cutting his shirt and asks Mary to pour water on the pieces to create filters for the kids. He says they need to move the filters to the back of the bus, away from the vents. He also begins to cover the windows with tape. At the exhibition center, they find out that the hydrants are losing pressure. Stopping the fire is no longer a priority, so they choose to have the firefighters focus on saving lives rather than trying to put out the fire. The chief then speaks at a small press conference, stating that the fires are growing larger each year and accuses the government of being foolish. On the bus, Mary thinks about whether she should make the kids fall asleep so they can pass away quietly when the fire arrives. She feels sad about never leaving her perfect place to explore the rest of the world. In contrast, Kevin wishes he had stayed for 28 years and been there when his father passed away. He starts to cry when he understands that he's now treating his son the same way he was treated. Suddenly, flames pop up beside the bus, and Kevin quickly runs over to use an extinguisher to put them out. More flames show up behind the car, so Mary grabs the extinguisher while Kevin keeps trying to put out the fire with his jacket. Eventually, the fire extinguisher is empty, but the large fire is still getting closer. Kevin sends Mary back to the bus and keeps trying to fight the flames with his jacket, but ends up burning his hand. After seeing the trees fall down, he runs back to the bus and tells them they'll have to drive through the fire. Unfortunately, the bus won't start, so Kevin checks the engine. As the fire is nearly under control, Kevin continues working on the problem until Mary is able to start the engine. He goes back inside and they finally start moving off. As the children shout, Kevin speeds through the fire as quickly as he can, making all sorts of wild turns to stay away from the larger flames. The vehicle keeps hitting branches, cars, and small fires. Yet, Kevin never gives up and even speeds up. After several frightening minutes of intense heat and complete darkness, the bus eventually emerges into an open space just outside the town, and the group finally sees sunlight again. Everyone lets out tears and gives each other big hugs, feeling relieved. Eventually, the bus arrives at the evacuation center, and the parents rush up to it right away to find and reconnect with their kids. Mary attempts to speak with the parents, but gets sidetracked when she notices her son is also present. Kevin asks an employee about his son and mother, but their names aren't listed as victim. Then Kevin goes to the medical tents and finally finds his mom, who explains that she was rescued by their neighbor. Sean left before the evacuation since he chose to stay with his mother. Kevin has no choice but to admit that his son is safer and happier living with his ex. Several days had passed when Kevin returned to check on what remained of his hometown. His house is just rubble and burned remain. However, he is able to find a photo of himself and his son. At that moment, his ex parks nearby, and Sean steps out to greet Kevin with a hug. This is based on a true story. Investigators found that the electric company caused the fire and was charged with manslaughter, so they had to pay $13.5 billion to the victim. Kevin pursued a career in teaching and continues to work as a teacher up to the present day. Mary is still going to the same school, but she travels a lot now. Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Leave a comment about your favorite movie, and we will make it next. Thanks for watching.